Today on Things You Should Know, why do dogs eat grass? Hang around. Here at Things You Should Know podcast, our focus varies from commonly asked questions like, what are the top email apps for iPhone users? Or how much does it cost to go to Disney World anyway? To the trending topics of the day, such as, are taxes going up or down? And who's Elon Musk? We shed light on things you probably have always wondered about, but you never got around to investigating them yourself. This podcast brings you the answers to your most commonly asked questions and makes you smarter just by listening. Information empowers, and the more information you have, the better decision you can make, and ultimately, your quality of life is based on the decisions you make. So, thanks for joining the discussion, and make sure that you subscribe today and not miss out on any future episodes of Things You Should Know. Hey guys, welcome to Things You Should Know. I'm your host, Kelly, and today we've got a very interesting, I'm going to actually stop saying very interesting, so every show is going to be interesting. We've got a unique one today, though. This particular one has to do with pet lovers, so I'm not sure how many pet lovers we have. I own 2 dogs. And I've actually seen the behavior that we're going to talk about in one of my dogs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that later as well. But our topic today is one that is widely Googled and researched. And it is, why does my dog eat grass? Why do dogs eat grass? So we're going to get into it today, so hang around before we get going. As always, I'd like to welcome any and all new folks aboard. This is your first time listening to Things You Should Know. Welcome aboard. Thanks for listening. And certainly for those of you who have been listening since day one and continue to come back and support the podcast, thank you so much. To all of you, I'll give the same call to action. If you've not subscribed, please go ahead and do so. And then share with your associates, your friends, and your coworkers, loved ones, family, etc. We would certainly appreciate it. So now, let's get into the meat of what we're going to be talking about today. I could guess that many of you listening are pet lovers, whether they're dogs or cats or just animals in general, and potentially pet owners. And so perhaps this is why this topic is so prevalent and in terms of being Googled and researched, and that is, why do dogs eat grass? If you are a pet owner, particularly a dog owner, and you've seen this behavior, and if you're like me, it is very curious indeed. And so we're going to go over, we've got a few resources here, veterinarianhospitals.com. And actually, I didn't know this before I started researching this, but there's a WebMD for pets. There's a WebMD for pets, and we gathered some information from there. And then a last article that we found was in a blog called thebark.com. So we thought we would compare, as we do, compare and contrast on this channel to see what trends we can find in the articles that are out there to try to determine what may be closest to the truth. So let's get going. Why do dogs eat grass? First of all, is it a physical need? Is it a physical need? Because one of the common assumptions is dogs lack fiber and they need the roughage, and it relieves their upset stomachs. Some dogs consume grass with urgency and then they vomit shortly thereafter. Some dogs eat grass to vomit and soothe their ailing stomach, or this is the assumption. Or do they develop an ailing stomach by eating the grass, and that's what made them vomit? Studies show that less than 25% of dogs vomit after eating grass, less than 25%. So it's unlikely that they turn to the green stuff as a form of self-medication. So that's one theory. And the other part of that is others have suggested that dogs are not smart enough to self-medicate. They don't really have that type of intelligence. Another study, only 10% of dogs show signs of illness prior to even eating the grass in the first place. The bottom line is that the majority of grass-eating dogs aren't sick beforehand, and they don't always vomit afterwards. There may be another digestive need, however, that is filled by grazing. Dogs do need roughage in their diets, and grass is a good source of fiber. A lack of roughage affects the dog's ability to digest food and to pass their stool. So grass may actually help the body function and run more smoothly. So if your dog, for example, shows signs of stomach discomfort, he may have a medical problem, such as something like gastric reflux or reflex, like we would see in human beings. Let's say maybe they have a inflamed bowel tract or some sort of inflammatory bowel disease, or potentially pancreatitis. So you really need to see a veterinarian if you consider this behavior to be even above and beyond the oddity that it is. If there's continual vomiting, continual eating grass, I would definitely get my dog checked out. Is it a psychological need? Well, one of the studies suggests that dogs who are left alone, i.e. their owners have to go to work or leave them at their apartment or homes over periods of time, simply are bored. And eating grass and nibbling on grass would be seen no differently than them, nibbling on your shoe or tearing up some drywall or a couch or whatever the case may be, because they're bored. They've been in the house all day. Dogs do crave human interaction, and they may try and get your attention by doing something off the wall, like eating grass. Any appropriate actions like eating grass could help them to get your attention. In addition, anxious dogs eat grass as a way of a comforting mechanism. Much like a human being, for example, would, bite their fingernails or something like that. What can you do as an owner? As an owner of a canine that's possibly grazing, what can you do? Well, identify if your dog is anxious. If you feel like your dog is anxious and just wants to play, then you need to ensure that you have a schedule for your pet that includes playtime and some time outside, with the pet, on walks and playing in the yard with the ball. Actually, a great thing to do is to buy your dog, your pet, a new toy. Give them an old T-shirt, something of yours that has your scent, that even though you're gone, they can have it and they can, lay on it or smell it. Now, I was telling you before we got started that I have two dogs. I have a English bulldog, miniature English bulldog, and I also have a deerhead cocker spaniel, a deerhead chihuahua. I used to have a cocker spaniel, and she passed away a couple years ago. So we have two dogs. They couldn't possibly be more different. My English bulldog, she's a sleeper. She's a couch dog. She loves to lay in your lap. She loves to lay on the couch. She just loves to sleep. She likes to play in the yard, but only for a certain amount of time because she only has so much energy. And if it's hot outside, if you know anything about English bulldogs, they can't do a lot of heat. So we don't do a lot of long walks. We do make sure she gets out and gets exercise, but her breed and her nasal construction is just not going to allow her to get hot and to get overheated. It's just not a good thing for English bulldogs. Now, I've had her longer than we've had the Chihuahua, but I've never, ever seen her chew grass, eat poop, any of those things, okay? My second dog, the Chihuahua, I've seen her do all of that, which obviously eating poop is super gross. My oldest son, works at a veterinary hospital and trains dogs. And when this first started happening, and I'm getting off a little bit, this is not necessarily grass, but it's dog's behavior. I said, what in the world is going on? Why do I have to keep her from pooping the yard? And he said, basically what happens is, and here's the other thing I need to share with you. My English Bulldog is older. We got the Chihuahua when she was a puppy. So she technically is not quite even 2 years old at this point. My English Bulldog is closer to 5 years old. So there's that. So my son said, basically what happens with poop is, and it's their primary diet, the dog food. We're not giving table food and scraps and all this other kind of stuff. So their poop smells a lot like their dog food, because that's all they're eating. And for them, they think perhaps that it's, something to eat because it smells so much like the dog food. So I said, okay, it's still grossing me out. So anyway, we worked her out of that in terms of, trying to eat poop and stuff like that in the yard. But we also noticed that she would just gnaw on plants and grass and just anything she could get her hands on or paws on in the yard. So you have to do a lot of, no, don't do this, no, don't do that, to keep her from throwing up, because our analysis and our theory was that she was getting sick and vomiting on the floor because she was just putting anything in her mouth. So we've personally gone through this, not so much now because she's an older puppy, but when she was younger, I would say probably between 6 months and a year, this was regular. She would throw up, or you could hear her gagging. You'd be like, what in the world have you gotten in your mouth now? So anyway, we have personal experience with dogs eating grass, and this is good education for us, although now we don't deal with it as much. So the next part about this is possibly, is it instinctual? Is it instinctual? There's no clear evidence that dogs' ancestors, who are wolves, nibbled on any sort of vegetation. Dogs in the wild did balance their diets by eating what they hunted, all of what they hunted, including meat and the bones and the internal organs and whatever contents were in the prey, in the stomach of their prey. Eating an entire animal provided a fairly balanced diet, especially when the animal's stomach contained grass and plants that fulfilled the dog's need for the fiber, for the roughage. So if a wolf was to catch a rabbit or a squirrel, an animal that's primarily a herbivore, then of course by consuming the entire animal, they are getting the contents of the animal's stomach, and a lot of times it's grass and flowers or nuts or whatever in the stomach. According to this research, and this is from thevethospital.com, dogs are not true carnivores, but they aren't exactly omnivores either. Dogs in the wild consume anything that helps fulfill their basic dietary requirements. If you examine their stool, for example, samples show that 11 to 47% of wolves eat grass. Interesting. Modern dogs don't have to hunt for their food, of course, but that doesn't mean that they don't retain the natural instinct to scavenge. And I'm not sure if you have a dog that likes to go through the trash or puts his nose, out and just kind of anywhere, things on the ground. But my Chihuahua does that as well. She's very interested in anything that has fallen on the floor. Dogs eating grass is a behavior problem that really may not be a problem at all. You may not need to worry if the occasional grazing session doesn't make the dog sick, and consistent parasite prevention is provided. In fact, behavior modification may interfere with natural instincts, and they don't harm the pet at all. It's hard to tell if they like it or not, but simply put, if it didn't taste good in their mouths, they probably wouldn't eat it. I'll give you a great example. We had a Cocker Spaniel some years ago. We had her whole life. From the time she was a pup, she lived 15 years. She ate, and we were not very good owners or educated owners at the time. We loved her and kept her fed and kept her warm and clean, but we didn't understand the impact of giving her table food, bread, and things that had grain in it, because it was making her break out and her ears. It just was a lot. So it was a lot for us to learn. And so anyway, For us, we knew that she liked certain types of dog food and she liked certain types of things. For example, if you were to give her like a vegetable, a carrot, an apple, you drop that on the floor, it's just going to be on the floor. She's not going to touch it. But Lord forbid, if you drop a piece of bread, it is, I mean, she's got it. If you drop anything that resembled meat, she's got it and gone. So there are some things that dogs won't eat. So the assumption here, if grass was, something that didn't taste good to them or something they didn't want, they would not eat it. So the question is, how do I stop them from doing it? Well, first of all, this first article is suggesting that maybe you don't do that. It may be something natural and instinctual, unless, of course, it's creating another issue. If they're eating it and immediately throwing up and they're doing it consistently, then yeah, you want to address it. But like we said at the top of the article, that not all dogs who eat grass actually vomit. And then at the end of the day, not all dogs actually eat grass. So let's look at the WebMD version of this. The actual name of this is called pica, and of this meaning eating grass. Pica is the technical term for the disorder characterized by eating things that are not food. In this case, it would be grass. Dogs eating grass is actually quite common, according to WebMD. A small-scale study of 49 dog owners whose dogs had regular access to grass and other plants found that 79% of the dogs had eaten plants at some time or another. Another survey suggests that plant-eating dogs found grass was the most commonly eaten plant. So, for example, they're not eating roses or eating, other flowers. They're going for the grass. They seem to know what it is. Now, some people propose that dogs might turn to eating grass when they don't feel good and they want to vomit. Okay? Again, we proposed this in the initial article, but also said that, many people have said, researchers have said that dogs are not really smart enough to self-medicate. But I think it's somewhere in the middle. Others dispute this idea, here we go, on the basis that dogs are not proven to be smart enough to decide to treat an upset stomach by eating grass. Evidence suggests that most dogs that eat grass aren't unwell beforehand, or at least they haven't vomited or shown any signs. In fact, fewer than 10% of dogs seem to be sick before eating grass, according to their owners. Grass eating doesn't usually lead to vomiting or throwing up. Less than 25% of the dogs that eat grass actually vomit regularly after the grazing. Other suggested reasons for why your dog may be eating grass. Number one could be improving their digestion. We talked about that. That's in agreement with the article from Veterinarians Hospital. Also, it could be something to help treat intestinal worms. It could be a nutritional need, like we said, the fiber, the roughage. So there's some similarities in this article and the previous article. So let's look at the bark. This is the last one we're going to look at. So normal dog behavior. There's also another reason. Eating grass, it could just be normal. This is according to thebark.com. Is it possible that dogs eat grass to pass the time or to aid in digestion because the grass actually tastes good? So their ancestors, such as the wolves, as we talked about, they're known to eat grass as well. Well, the previous article stated otherwise. So this is why we do more than one. Plant material has been found in up to 74% of wolf scat samples. It's likely that eating grass is a natural behavior for dogs, one passed down, through the canine gene pool from their ancestors. The author of How the Dogs Became the Dog says that genetically, dietarily, and philosophically, behavior and social flexibility of canines combined with a relatively unspecialized dental structure allows them to be generalist eaters. He's made them adaptable to different habitats. Their tooth structure has made them adaptable to different habitats and to human societies. So as we said before, that technically they're not carnivores, but they're not herbivores either. They can, as this article is saying, they're somewhat unique and somewhat unspecialized. So that's a different perspective as well. Grass may even provide dogs with some source of fiber. So there's another consistency. And speaking of fiber, it might be time to consider adding vegetables or high-quality sources of fiber, like wheatgrass, to your dog's diet if your dog is consistently eating grass. So here's a potential solution. So let's say, what do I do? How can I keep my dog safe? Because if you're like me, you do yard work. Sometimes we have to put down chemicals on the yard to keep the insects away or even weeds away, and you don't want your dog in that. So what do we do? First of all, make a dog safe space. Make a dog safe space. And in this space, in your yard, whether you're going to fence it off or just remember where it is, don't use any pesticides in this area of the yard. Don't use any toxic chemicals or anything like that, because this is the space where your dog hangs out. This is where he or she does all this sniffing and does his business. Don't use any chemicals in that area of the yard. Secondly, what you can do is clean up the poop. Reduce the risk of parasites, the parasite transmission rate, by making sure that your dog only eats grass that's in your yard, in your own yard. Dispose of dog poop regularly and consider making a pet waste digester. In other words, make sure that if you go out, this is what we do, have tons of bags on my dog's crates. And whenever they go out, I'm always picking up poop, mainly because I didn't want my smaller dog to eat it. And of course, I cut grass at my house and I don't want to be stepping in it. So I don't want my yard full of dog poop. So the other thing is they're saying here is that it can spread parasites. So that's another reason you want to make sure all the poop is picked up. And then lastly, keep an eye out for mean seeds. Foxtails, small, dry seeds produced by invasive grass-type weeds, are prevalent in many lawns and pose a serious risk to dogs. They're called foxtails. These weeds grow quickly in the wet spring season, then during the summer creates sort of a ticking time bomb, because the seed is designed to burrow into the surroundings and can cause significant problems for dogs who digest them or even simply walk through them. If you have foxtails in your yard, be diligent about removing them. Dig them up completely, roots and all. Or you can soak them with vinegar at ground level. Watch your dog closely, basically, is the best thing to do. Watch when you're out, whether you're in your yard, whether you're in a public place, at a dog park, make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, aware of what's on the ground, aware of what may be in the grass, because it's the safest protocol for your dog. So in summary, the hypothesis, the theories here are your dog basically could be lacking in fiber and need the roughage if they are eating grass on a regular basis. Now, the concern, and you need to see a veterinarian, if your dog is eating an enormous amount of grass, throwing up an enormous, on a regular basis, there could be, and there more than likely is, something else going on there in the digestive tract, and you need to see a professional. So at the end of the day, dogs can't communicate with us. We've got to make the best decision for them and for their care. And for example, me, if my dog continued to throw up, which did happen, we were concerned and we called the vet. And if had it persisted, we would have taken her in. So if there is a situation where you feel uncomfortable or just in the gray, you don't really know what to do, then that would be the time to call a professional, just in my opinion. So anyway, this has been a summary, quick study on why dogs eat grass. And I know there are a lot of us who love our pets, and we have dogs, and we want to see them healthy and happy. And we want to make sure we're doing all we can to make sure they're safe. Hope you've enjoyed this today and you've learned something. Thank you for listening to Things You Should Know. My name is Kelly. I'm your host. I'll see you in 2 days. Thanks.